can I make my yellow buttercream white? Why do my piping tips burst out of the piping bags? Why are there so many air bubbles in my buttercream? How do I get my frosting really smooth? I poked my finger into my cake. How do I fix it? In this video, I'll answer the 10 most frequently asked questions about buttercream, sharing all of my tips and tricks for delicious, smooth buttercream that's perfect for piping or frosting or icing a cake. Air bubbles happen when there's too much air in buttercream. How? Mixing on a high speed, resting for a long time, or changing temperature, like moving from the fridge to room temperature. To prevent air bubbles, mix using the lowest speed on your mixer and with a paddle or beater attachment, not a whisk. To fix air bubbles, stir buttercream aggressively to knock the buttercream against the sides of the bowl to push the air out. You'll need to do this after buttercream has been sitting for a while, or after it's chilled in the fridge or freezer and then comes back to room temperature. My favorite hack, if you're struggling with really stubborn air bubbles, is to scoop up a third of the buttercream and microwave it for 10 seconds. And then stir it back into your main bowl of buttercream, mixing the melted buttercream into the rest to get the perfect consistency with no air bubbles. If your buttercream piping is starting to droop or look shapeless, even though it looked great a few minutes earlier, the warmth of your hands from gripping the piping bag has softened the buttercream. Put the piping bag in the freezer and set a timer for 1 minute. Don't leave it any longer or the buttercream will freeze hard against the metal piping tip. After a minute, the buttercream will be firmer, and your piping will be neat again. Okay, yellow buttercream. Butter is yellow, so buttercream will also have a yellowish color, which is not ideal if you're trying to make a bright white cake. To get rid of the yellow, dip a toothpick into violet gel to get just a tiny amount and drag it through the buttercream, mixing it in to cancel out the yellow and make a bright white buttercream. Look at the difference between before and after adding violet. Next, after spending ages smoothing the frosting on your cake, denting or poking it feels like the end of the world. Don't panic, this is easy to fix whether the frosting has set or not. Just spread a bit more buttercream over the damage, and instead of smoothing it with your spatula or cake comb, use a little piece of acetate. This is flexible plastic that will curve around the cake to match the curve of the frosting, and it will smooth this new buttercream without damaging the frosting that's already on the cake. Now you'd never know there was a finger hole in this frosting. Next, how to fit a piping tip into a piping bag so it doesn't burst out. Piping bags are sealed at the end, so to fit a tip in a new bag properly, drop the tip into the bag and push it all the way to the end. Use scissors to score a line about halfway up the tip. Then slide the piping tip out of the way and cut along that line. Now, when you press the tip back down, about half of it will poke out of the bag, just enough to hold it snugly in place while you pipe, whichever piping tip you choose to use. If your frosting just won't get smooth, this tip always works for me. Switch to a metal cake comb and warm it up using a blowtorch or a hairdryer or hot water, and rub it so it's dry and warm but not hot. Now scrape around your cake and the warm metal will glide over the buttercream and fill in any shallow imperfections to leave the surface super smooth. Okay, melting buttercream. Just like butter melts in the microwave, buttercream melts in hot weather. If you know a cake is going to sit outside on a hot day, one option is to substitute half of the butter in the buttercream recipe for shortening. Crisco, Trex, there are lots of different brands in different countries. Shortening is much more stable in hot weather than butter. Using half the amount of butter will still give you the buttery flavor, and a hack to disguise the flavor of shortening is to add half a teaspoon of clear vanilla, which brings out the butteriness of the buttercream without that bite you can get from shortening. You can use this exactly the same way as buttercream made with just butter. To frost a cake, tint it any color, get really smooth frosting, or use it for piping. And half buttercream will hold up much better in the sun. Look at how well it holds its shape, while the all butter buttercream melts. Now let's answer why buttercream cracks. After buttercream sets, it's hard, and if you move it, it can crack. On a thin cake board, the weight of the cake can make the board bend or buckle. Look closely and you'll see little cracks around the bottom of this cake, where the buttercream has shifted after it's set. To prevent cracks, if you're using a thin cake board, support it by holding one hand underneath in the middle to bear the weight of the cake. Or even better, use a thick, strong cake board that won't bend, even with a heavy cake on top. Can you add different ingredients to flavor buttercream? Absolutely. It's all about balancing how much liquid is in the buttercream. So if you add Nutella or lemon curd or peanut butter or cream cheese, anything looser than the consistency of buttercream, add it a spoonful at a time and check the consistency of the buttercream to make sure you stop adding before it gets too runny. You're looking for a consistency that's easy to stir but will hold its shape when you spread or pipe it. One way to add lots of flavor without making buttercream too watery is to add a dry version instead of a liquid ingredient, like freeze-dried pineapple instead of
of pineapple juice, or freeze-dried strawberries instead of a strawberry puree. To learn everything about buttercream, how to make it, troubleshoot common issues, color it, frost a cake perfectly smoothly, take my online course, The Basics of Buttercream. The link for 25% off is in the top of the screen and in the video description. Finally, can you freeze buttercream? Yes, at 4 different stages. Alone in an airtight container like a Ziploc bag, or as the filling in between cake layers, by wrapping the cake in cling film or saran wrap to protect the cake and buttercream from moisture and flavors in the freezer. You can also freeze a cake that's frosted with buttercream by putting the cake into the freezer for an hour to set the buttercream, and then wrapping it in 2 layers of cling film or saran wrap to protect it. And you can freeze buttercream decorations, alone for 10 minutes so that they become hard enough to handle to decorate a cake with, or freeze a cake with decorations on it by wrapping it in 2 layers of plastic wrap after about an hour in the freezer unwrapped first, so that the frosting and decorations are firm and won't get damaged by the plastic wrap. Move buttercream cakes to the fridge the night before you serve them to thaw gradually, and take them out of the fridge 2 hours before serving, and unwrap them straight away before the buttercream softens so you don't damage them. The cake will taste best at room temperature, so don't serve it straight away while it's still cold. I hope these buttercream frequently asked questions have been helpful. To learn hundreds more cake decorating techniques and designs, visit my cake school on BritishGirlBakes.com for online courses and memberships. See you there!